From a young age, Scarlett Hayes learned a lesson no one ever taught her. Some people in a family are simply loved more. She was the eldest daughter of the Hayes family, a family that on the outside seemed perfectly put together. Her father, Robert Hayes, ran his own financial consulting firm in Boston. Her mother, Diane, was a luxury real estate agent in suburban Connecticut. A 3-story house, lavish dinners, yearly vacations, they had it all. Except fairness, Scarlett was a quiet, studious child with a deep love for learning. Her younger sister, Chloe, 3 years her junior, was the sunshine of every room she entered. Chloe had the kind of smile that made people lean in and laugh, that pulled others close. Scarlett didn't resent her. Not at first. In fact, she had once felt proud watching Chloe so joyful. But over time, as every compliment, every glance, every ounce of parental attention seemed to fall on Chloe, and she was left lingering in the background, Scarlett realized something in this house love wasn't always distributed equally. The first sharp memory came after her 8th grade science fair. Scarlett had spent 2 whole months studying the effects of soil pH on plant growth. She won first place, her proudest moment yet. Clutching her tiny trophy, she came home hoping for a warm hug for her parents' glowing approval. But that night dinner conversation revolved entirely around Chloe's beginner ballet recital, a performance she had prepared for in less than 3 weeks. Diane gushed about Chloe's natural grace, and Robert proudly passed around pictures of her in a pink tutu. Scarlett got a nod and a "good job, sweetheart." Chloe's photo was printed and pinned to the fridge. Scarlett's certificate was tucked into a drawer. It wasn't the last time. High school brought more of the same. Scarlett won a state debate championship. Her parents were too busy. Chloe joined the cheerleading squad. Plans were rearranged to attend every match. Every vacation, birthday, even weekend plan revolved around Chloe's availability. Scarlett could hardly remember a celebration that wasn't overshadowed. Scarlett wasn't one to demand attention. She didn't know how to yell or cry or accuse, so she studied harder. She poured herself into school, clinging to the hope that being excellent would finally make her visible. But the harder she tried, the more invisible she became. In the Hayes household, love wasn't earned through effort, it was drawn to sparkle. And no matter how accomplished Scarlett was, she simply wasn't the one they chose to shine. Scarlett Hayes never studied for praise. She studied because it was the one space in her life where results felt objective. In a world of unspoken rules and quiet favoritism, grades were hard proof. An A-grade essay, a competitive scholarship, those were the ways she reminded herself she mattered. At least on paper. But paper didn't reach her parents' hearts. When Scarlett was selected to speak at the Academic Excellence Ceremony in 10th grade, she excitedly emailed the invitation printed copies, highlighted the date on the family calendar, and reminded her parents again and again. Yet on the day of the event, her reserved seat for parents remained empty. Diane had to take Chloe prom dress shopping, and Robert had a last-minute client meeting. Scarlett stood on stage delivering her speech to a sea of strangers searching for a familiar face that never appeared. When she sent the recording afterward, her mother texted back, "Oh, good job, honey. I'm driving, we'll watch later." These hollow congratulations became familiar, like a broken record. When Scarlett received a scholarship to attend a summer writing camp at Stanford, a rare opportunity for high schoolers, Robert's first response was, "Is it going to cost us anything?" When she earned a perfect score on her ACT, Diane countered with, "Oh, Chloe was just picked for a fall fashion campaign at the mall." Each time Scarlett brought home a new success, her family seemed to pivot even faster to talking about Chloe. It was as if Chloe's presence swept through the house like a wind that demanded attention, while Scarlett's efforts simply dissolved into the silence. She began to doubt herself. Had she done something wrong? Was she too quiet, too withdrawn, too unlike Chloe to be noticed? Even when she tried to share posting her school newsletter feature, tagging her name in local newspaper highlights, sending links to her published work, her parents rarely responded. Once she forwarded an article in which her essay had been published nationally. Her dad replied, "Your mom will love this." Scarlett didn't cry. She rarely let herself. But a quiet emptiness grew inside her. At some point, her achievements stopped feeling like victories. If they weren't enough to earn love, what were they for? She didn't resent Chloe. But Scarlett began to realize that some people, intentionally or not, were simply easier to love in the eyes of their parents. Chloe fit the mold, bright, social image perfect. She was the daughter proudly displayed. Scarlett was the quiet shadow tucked away. For many, college is where adulthood begins. For Scarlett Hayes, it was the only way out, a quiet escape route from a home where she had always been an afterthought. She didn't choose her university for prestige or price tag. She chose it for the distance. Westbridge University, 4 hours north of home, became her top choice for one simple reason: far enough to breathe, close enough not to seem rebellious. When the acceptance letter arrived, Scarlett didn't scream or cry happy tears like in those viral videos. She simply nodded, printed it out, and pinned it to her bedroom corkboard. No one asked. No one noticed. When she finally brought it up over dinner, Diane offered a gentle, "Oh, congratulations, sweetheart," before turning to ask Chloe about her latest photo shoot. Robert followed up with, "Does the school have dorms, or are you planning to come home on weekends?" Scarlett didn't answer. She wasn't coming home. Not anymore. College life wasn't easy. Away from the familiar structure of high school and the cold rhythm of her home, Scarlett had to learn everything from scratch: laundry, grocery shopping, dealing with loneliness. But even amid the struggle, there was a strange sense of relief. No one compared her to Chloe. No one ignored her at dinner tables. Here she wasn't Robert and Diane's daughter or Chloe's older sister. She was just Scarlett. Her roommate Ava Carter was bright and bold, a whirlwind from Minnesota who came from a large, loud family. Ava couldn't understand why Scarlett's parents rarely called or sent care packages. "They're just busy," Scarlett would say, her voice mechanical. But Ava's quiet, unblinking gaze sometimes made Scarlett feel stripped bare, not because Ava judged her, but because she could see the absence Scarlett worked so hard to deny. In her sophomore American literature class, Scarlett met Noah Bennett, a guy who loved strong coffee and even stronger books. He wasn't flashy or performative. He just saw her. "You know you deserve better, right?" he asked one day after witnessing her mother brush her off during a rushed phone call. The words caught Scarlett off guard. Deserve. A simple word she had never believed applied to her. Something began to shift. She still studied hard, but not to be noticed. She wrote for joy, joined the campus newspaper, not to impress anyone, but because she had stories to tell. Day by day, piece by piece, Scarlett began to heal, not completely, not yet, but enough to finally breathe. Scarlett Hayes had once dreamed of this moment, not for bragging rights, but for hope. Hope that someday the years of quiet striving would be recognized by the two people whose approval still lingered in her heart. When the email arrived from the dean's office confirming she had been selected as valedictorian, Scarlett had to read it 3 times to believe it. Valedictorian, the highest honor, the culmination of 4 relentless years, sleepless nights, and pressure-filled exams. She had done it. She sat still in her dorm room, her fingers trembling as she dialed home. The phone rang 4 times before her mother, Diane, picked up the noise of a TV show blaring in the background. "Mom," Scarlett said, trying to steady her voice, "I have some big news. I've been named valedictorian." There was a short pause. Then her mother replied vaguely, "Oh, that's nice." "What exactly is valedictorian again?" Scarlett patiently explained, even though they had attended her cousin's graduation where the role had been clearly discussed. "Well, congratulations," Diane said, then immediately pivoted. "Chloe just got invited to a party hosted by Jennifer Lawrence's stylist's assistant. She's really making great connections in the fashion world." Scarlett didn't get a chance to respond before her mother shouted across the room, "Robert, Scarlett has some kind of school news valedictorian or something." From the other end, her father's muffled voice echoed, "Oh, congrats, kiddo! When's the ceremony?" Scarlett swallowed her disappointment, forcing her tone to stay calm. "May 18th, 10 a.m. I'll send formal invitations, but I wanted to let you know personally." She spent the weekend handcrafting each invitation using calligraphy she'd taught herself freshman year. Every card included a personal note. For her parents, she wrote, "Having you there would mean everything to me." She drove the 2 hours home to deliver them in person, hoping for warmth. But that dinner, like so many others, was dominated by Chloe's updates on her fashion internship. Scarlett waited for a pause before sliding the invitations across the table. Her father glanced at his and asked, "You drove all the way here just for this? You could have mailed it." Diane at least thanked her, then promptly turned back to ask Chloe about another photo shoot. Before leaving, Scarlett asked once more, "You'll both be there right 10 o'clock, May 18th. "Yeah, of course," Robert said, eyes still on his phone. "Got it marked. Wouldn't miss it." That one sentence was all Scarlett clung to for the next 2 weeks, a fragile thread of belief that maybe this time they would show up. 3 days before graduation, Scarlett Hayes got a call from her father. She had just finished rehearsing her speech with her advisor, nervous, excited, hopeful. When Robert's name lit up her screen, she answered quickly, thinking maybe they wanted to confirm logistics or ask what flowers she'd like after the ceremony. But his voice was flat, carefully composed with performative fatigue. "Scarlett, your mom and I talked. We won't be able to make it to graduation." She froze. "What, I'm the valedictorian. I'm giving the speech." "We know. We're very proud of you, but honestly, it's been such a long month. Driving 4 hours, sitting through a whole ceremony. We just don't have it in us. Hope you understand." She didn't, and he didn't wait for her to try. The call ended with "Take lots of pictures. We want to see how beautiful you looked." Then silence. Scarlett sat still in her dorm room. She didn't cry. It wasn't sadness she felt, it was something colder, like a frost quietly settling in her chest. She had prepared for this speech, but never for delivering it to 3 empty seats where her family should have been. An hour later, Ava walked in and stopped in her tracks. Scarlett was motionless, eyes rimmed red. "They're not coming," Scarlett whispered, barely audible. "They said they're too tired." Ava squeezed her hand. "Scarlett, you don't deserve this." That night, trying to stay composed, Scarlett opened her phone to check congratulatory texts. Her scrolling finger paused at a newly posted Instagram story from Chloe's account. The image stopped her breath. Chloe holding a champagne flute flanked by Robert and Diane, all in matching white spa robes, smiling widely. The caption, "Family Spa Day." So needed this. Scarlett's chest clenched. Her heartbeat pounded as she swiped again, photo after photo of facials, massages, a gourmet lunch at an upscale downtown restaurant. In one particularly painful image, Diane and Chloe were wrapped in silk robes, arms around each other, beaming. The caption read, "Mother-daughter goals." Beneath it, Diane had commented, "Best day with my baby girl." "Too tired to drive to my graduation," Scarlett murmured. But not too tired for this. She took screenshots of the entire story and sent them to Ava with one word, "Look." Ava's reply came instantly, "They're cruel." Scarlett didn't know if she should scream, sob, or laugh bitterly, but one thing became heartbreakingly clear. This wasn't disappointment anymore. This was betrayal. The night before graduation, Scarlett Hayes sat alone at her desk, the glow of her lamp casting shadows across her tired but resolute face. In front of her lay 2 versions of her speech, one she had rehearsed for weeks, safe, grateful, and polished like every other valedictorian address. The other, written in a surge of emotion less than 24 hours earlier, was raw, honest, and filled with words she had never dared to speak aloud. She stared at them like they were 2 versions of her life, one that kept the peace through silence, and one that finally said, "Enough." The next morning was golden with spring sunlight. Scarlett donned her graduation gown, hiding beneath it, the navy blue dress she had bought with her own savings, the one she had once imagined her mother complimenting as elegant. Ava adjusted her cap while Noah arrived with a bouquet of sunflowers and a small, neatly wrapped box. But the biggest surprise was Ms. Harrington, her former high school English teacher, who once told her, "Your words will change someone's life, maybe even your own." She had driven 4 hours to attend, bringing with her a silver fountain pen, an heirloom from her grandmother, a female journalist in the 1920s. "She wrote when women weren't supposed to," Ms. Harrington said softly. "Now it's your turn." When her name was called, Scarlett stepped onto the stage to loud applause. She placed both speeches on the podium, then gently slid the old one aside. Her voice rang out clear and steady. "4 years ago, we came here looking for something. Knowledge, yes. Skills, of course. But for many of us, myself included, it was visibility. The hope of being seen." She wasn't reading. She was speaking. To the crowd. To herself. To anyone who had ever felt invisible in their own family. Scarlett shared what it was like to chase achievements hoping they'd earn her love. About family who never showed up. And finally about the 3 empty seats in the reserved section. They told me they were too tired to come. But social media showed otherwise: massages, champagne, spa day smiles. That stung. But it also taught me this: I am worthy, even if they don't see it. Silence followed. Then the audience erupted. Classmates stood to applaud. Ms. Harrington wiped away tears. Scarlett smiled not because of the applause, but because for the first time in her life she had been seen by herself. Right after her bold speech, Scarlett Hayes knew the storm was coming. She hadn't expected silence. She knew her words, though no names were mentioned, had landed exactly where they were meant to in the ears of her parents. After the ceremony, Scarlett ignored her vibrating phone and went to lunch with Ava, Noah, and Ms. Harrington, the people who had actually shown up. They laughed, clinked glasses of apple cider, and celebrated a quiet but profound victory. But as Scarlett returned to the auditorium to retrieve her forgotten diploma cover, the storm officially broke. Her phone overflowed with unread messages, 2 missed calls from her father, and a string of increasingly furious texts from Chloe. The last one read, "Mom's crying. Everyone's freaking out. You ruined everything just to make it about you." Scarlett gripped her phone not with regret, but with the heaviness of impact. She was about to leave when the doors creaked open, and there stood Chloe. Perfect as always, carefully curled hair designer purse slung over one arm, but her face was flushed with rage. "Mom and Dad are looking for you," Chloe snapped, arms folded. "They're pissed and you owe them an explanation." "That speech, seriously, how petty can you be?" Scarlett met her sister's glare with a calm smile. "I spoke the truth. That wasn't the place for your personal issues," Chloe hissed. "You humiliated the whole family." Scarlett let out a short, humorless laugh, years of silence finally collapsing into sound. "Family," she echoed. "You mean the family that left me home on my 18th birthday to take you to the beach, or the one that said they were too tired for graduation and then posted spa selfies?" Chloe fell silent. Scarlett didn't raise her voice, but each word landed like a blade slicing through polished memories. This wasn't revenge. This was the first time I didn't stay quiet. And if they're embarrassed, maybe they should ask themselves why. For the first time, Chloe had no immediate comeback. Her expression shifted from anger to confusion to something that looked like worry. "I didn't know they weren't going," she said quietly. "I thought it was just a weekend spa thing." "I used to think they were just busy," Scarlett said. "I used to believe that if I just tried hard enough, they'd eventually see me." She turned away before Chloe could respond. With every step she took away from that auditorium, Scarlett didn't feel relief, but she did feel certain of one thing: the storm had begun. And this time, she wasn't going to hide from the rain. As Scarlett Hayes and her sister Chloe walked away from the empty auditorium, the tension between them lingered like smoke. The confrontation had cracked something open, but hadn't yet brought healing. Still, neither of them turned away. There was something unfinished between them, not obligation, but truth, waiting. They walked silently toward the parking lot where Scarlett's car was parked. The quiet was heavy but not hostile. It was Chloe who finally spoke, her voice smaller than Scarlett had ever heard. "You think being the favorite was easy for me?" Scarlett turned, startled by the honesty in her tone, but she didn't interrupt. Chloe continued, "I didn't ask to be the golden child. I just learned how to keep them happy. Mom liked pretty pictures, so I learned to pose. Dad liked outgoing daughters, so I told stories. After a while, I didn't know who I actually was anymore." Scarlett stood frozen. For the first time, the sister who had always seemed radiant and untouchable looked uncertain, even scared. "I saw how strong you were," Chloe said softly. "Always getting awards, never breaking. But I also saw how lonely you looked. And I envied that strength." Those words opened something invisible. Scarlett sank onto a nearby bench, Chloe following and setting her designer bag aside like it didn't matter. "I envied you," Scarlett admitted, "because you were seen. Every time I won something, they redirected the conversation to you. Every time I needed them, they were listening to you instead." Chloe looked down, her voice cracking. "I didn't know you felt that way. They never said anything." "I never said anything either," Scarlett replied. "Because in our house, silence was rewarded. Speaking up made you the problem." They sat there, not defending, not accusing. Just two sisters finally seeing each other clearly for the first time. Chloe looked up, eyes rimmed red. "You were right to speak up. Maybe Mom and Dad aren't ready to hear it, but I am." Scarlett nodded, her hand gently resting on her sister's. For the first time, it wasn't a standoff. It was a beginning. As Scarlett and Chloe returned to the dorm, something fundamental had shifted. The silence between them wasn't tense anymore, it was thoughtful. Scarlett had braced herself for what was to come. Facing their parents wasn't going to be easy. But what she hadn't anticipated was this: she wouldn't be facing them alone. Robert and Diane were already waiting in the hallway, their posture stiff, their expressions hard, as though they were the ones who had been wronged. Diane's makeup was immaculate, but couldn't mask the fury in her eyes. Robert stood with arms crossed, projecting the same cold authority he always used when he accused Scarlett of embarrassing the family. Scarlett instinctively reached for Chloe's hand, and to her surprise, Chloe didn't pull away. "So you finally decided to show up," Diane snapped, her voice sharp. "You've humiliated this family. I've gotten dozens of calls. Your father's clients saw the video." Scarlett kept her voice steady. "I only told the truth. And if the truth embarrassed the family, then maybe that says something about what needs to change." Robert stepped forward, angrier now. "Do you even understand how much you hurt your mother? She cried for hours. After everything we've done for you, you chose to publicly shame us." Scarlett stood tall, meeting his gaze. "You had 22 years to listen to me privately, but you never did. So I said it in a way you couldn't ignore." The air crackled with tension, but what happened next caught everyone off guard. Chloe stepped beside Scarlett. "She's right," Chloe said quietly but firmly. Scarlett didn't lie. You've always favored me, and I've stayed quiet for too long." Chloe Diane gasped, shocked. "No," Mom Chloe said, her voice shaking but resolute. "It's time to stop pretending. This family has never been fair, and I won't keep playing along." Scarlett turned toward her sister. Their eyes met in a silent exchange that said everything. She wasn't alone, and that changed everything. The dorm room fell silent after Chloe stepped beside Scarlett. Their parents didn't speak for several moments, as if the foundation of everything they believed had just cracked. Diane sank down onto the stripped bed, her eyes unfocused. Robert remained standing, jaw tight, not angry anymore, but confused. Scarlett looked at the people in front of her, the ones who raised her, the ones who once made her believe she wasn't enough, and the sister who had always seemed like the embodiment of everything she could never be. She didn't feel triumphant. She only felt clarity. It was time to draw the line. "I don't hate you, Scarlett," began her voice calm. "I'm not trying to cut you out, but I can't keep pretending everything's fine." Robert frowned. "So what do you want?" "I want boundaries," she said. "I want to be able to speak about my feelings without being labeled dramatic. I want to be respected not for what I achieve, but simply for who I am." Diane covered her eyes with one hand, her voice cracking. "I just thought you were stronger. I didn't know you were hurting like that." "That's why I had to speak," Scarlett replied. "Silence never helped me." Chloe, still sitting beside Scarlett, added softly, "I need boundaries too. I don't want to be the measuring stick anymore. I'm tired of being the perfect one just to keep the peace." Robert took a step back, his voice lower now. "You're talking like we're the villains here." Scarlett shook her head. "No. But the deepest wounds often come from the people closest to you, and I'm done letting them go unspoken." There was a long silence. No one cried. No one stormed out. But something had shifted. The truth had been spoken, and boundaries had been laid not to punish, but to protect. After graduation day, life didn't suddenly become easier for Scarlett Hayes, but it became more honest. There were no more forced smiles, no more exhausting efforts to impress people who never truly saw her. Scarlett moved into a small apartment in Brooklyn, using her modest savings and freelance writing gigs to start fresh. She no longer had to report her achievements to anyone. Each morning she'd wake early, brew coffee, put on soft jazz, and write not for grades, not for awards, but for herself. Healing wasn't linear. There were nights when Scarlett lay awake replaying her graduation speech in her mind, wondering, did I go too far? But then she'd remember Chloe's hand in hers, the uncharacteristic quiet from her parents during that long conversation, and she knew she hadn't. Scarlett began to care for herself in ways her family never taught her. She cooked not to impress anyone, but to nourish herself. She took long walks in the park, listened to podcasts about healing and boundaries. She began writing a book not about success, but about silence, about the children who grew up feeling not enough, and the journey of learning to believe they are worthy. Chloe stayed in touch not as the once favored little sister, but as a true friend. They talked about childhood, about misunderstandings, and what they'd do differently if they could go back. Scarlett didn't expect her family to change overnight, but she had chosen to change how she engaged with them. Most importantly, Scarlett stopped trying to be seen. She learned to see herself and to nurture the person she found there. 1 year after graduation, Scarlett Hayes sat in a small cafe in Brooklyn, a nearly finished manuscript of her first book in front of her. Outside the window, the city bustled as always, but inside for the first time, Scarlett felt peace. She was no longer the forgotten daughter or the child who had to earn love. Now she was the author of her own story, written in her own voice, not one imposed by others. Her family hadn't disappeared from her life, but their roles had changed. She still spoke with her parents, but on her terms. No more phone calls filled with criticism or unsolicited advice. Scarlett filtered what she accepted, and that brought peace, not guilt. As for Chloe, the former invisible rival, she had become true family. There was no more competition, no comparison. They now shared honestly about pain dreams and their own healing journeys. Scarlett had come to understand that family isn't just about blood. It's where you can be yourself without conditions, where your voice is heard, where you don't have to compete to be loved. And if that place never existed before, you have every right to create it from scratch with your own hands. Scarlett chose to do just that. She built a family from the friends who showed up, the teacher who believed in her, the late nights she spent writing to heal, and from a heart that no longer wanted to hide. True freedom, she realized, wasn't about cutting everyone off. It was about choosing who gets access to your inner world. As the final pages printed, Scarlett smiled. There were no tears, no buried sadness, just a young woman who had once been forgotten, now redefining both her worth and her idea of family.